Quick! 15 angry horns are barreling down on you. What do you do if you're the tank? If you're a guard, you're challenged and make sure to take all the aggro so your mates survive, right? But what if there are more horns than you're able to challenge? What if your mates die because you're too slow? That was the lesson I learned this weekend as I ran Poison Garden Tier 5. Sit tight as we go through the Poison Garden, and I'll reveal to you the solution for defeating the Grand Cultivator Oguanine without a healer in your group. If this is your first time here, hi, my name is Miloa, and I help gamers push themselves to the next level. Sant Lhoer the Poison Garden is the latest 3-man instance released by Standing Stone Games as part of the Return to Carn Dum expansion in Lord of the Rings Online. There are only 2 bosses in this instance, which makes it short and sweet, and yes, rewarding. First, let's quickly recap the mobs that you'll encounter, what they do, and how to mitigate their effects. Soldiers do nothing special, they just do straight damage. As the name Poison Garden suggests, the environment in this instance is dangerous. The river has a nasty debuff called Helshkim's Gift that subtracts 10% of your morale every 3 seconds while you're in the river and lasts for 15 seconds once you're out. Remember to remove this disease once you get out of the river if you want to live. The haulers barely do any damage, but they will yank their target around and all over the place, drawing them ever closer. If you're not careful with your pulls, you can end up being punted into a mob of ads, get swamped, and wipe your group. The Reavers do an annoying frontal called Acidic Swipe. That is a yellow bar induction and can be interrupted. Higher mitigations will mean less damage, so if your tank is beefy enough, you can just ignore this mechanic and focus on killing it. The Ravager is identical to the trolls in the Vile Apothecary. They have a buff called Momentum that can stack up to 5. Each momentum allows the Ravager to do 10% more melee damage. Momentum can only be removed with CC skills like Daze, Stuns, and Fears. Since all classes have these skills, everyone should pay attention to remove these, as it will increase your group stability. The priest or priestess will cast a fear called Shadow's Touch onto you that reduces shadow mitigation by 25% for 1.5 minutes, and Mortal Terror that does 86,000 shadow damage every 4 seconds for 32 seconds. This can easily be cleansed. The priestess does a yellow bar induction called Siphon Life that does damage to their target. This can be interrupted and thus avoided. Now we come to our first boss. Our strategy is pretty simple. Have the tank hold both Krathair and Tarka Oka. Kill Krathair first and then Tarka Oka. The only real mechanic to be concerned about here are the knockbacks. Since we're fighting in tight quarters, with the pillar in the middle breaking line of sight can become a problem when the tank goes flying. So you want to stay grouped up as much as possible. Also, be careful how you position yourself because the knockback can send you flying into poisonous plants in the greenhouse that puts a wound on you that cannot be potted. Back up against the gate and you won't have problems with the knockbacks. If your tank has enough mitigations and can self-heal, then positioning is not a concern and you can probably bring 2 DPS with you and just mow this boss down. However, if your tank is struggling to survive, you will want to bring 1 DPS and 1 healer. From my experience so far, it really doesn't matter what DPS you bring, and yes, even a red LM would work here. The second boss, the Grand Cultivator Oguanine, has 2 main mechanics, ads and self-heals. Basic strategy is to kill ads first and remove corruption from the boss second if he is self-healing. At 100%, Oguanine calls for the 2 soldiers and priestess to attack. Ads will have the same mechanics as discussed before. Once the guards are dead, Oguanine will become active. At 85%, Oguanine will call for 4 Reavers that will have the same mechanics as before. Tank should have no problem picking up the ads and holding them while DPS mows them down. At 50%, Oguanine summons Venom Caps. Venom Caps will explode if you get too close to them and burst forth poisonous gas called Aura Acidic Cloud that deals 86,000 acid damage every 2 seconds. If your team stays grouped up by the entrance, then you can choose to ignore the Venom Caps. If you want to be safe and have the freedom to move about later in the fight, then your DPS should focus on killing the Venom Caps. They have low morale and should die quickly. At 30%, Oguanine calls forth a ton of very angry horns, more than what your tank alone will be able to challenge and hold. This is where it can get a bit dicey without the healer. The DPS will need to be able to survive with self-heals and kiting. until the tank is able to lock down all the horns. This is why you would take out the venom caps earlier to allow the DPS room to kite if needed. The horns have low morale and can be AoE'd and killed quickly, but they do a ton of damage. Everyone should save their AoE skills and big heals for this part of the fight. Once you're over these adds, it's smooth sailing. Make sure to kill all the horns and then finish off the boss. There will be 4 times during the fight that Oakwanine will try to heal herself to full, at roughly 80, 60, 40, and 20% morale. For example, at 60%, Oakwanine will go to the northeast corner, summons a puddle, and get a ton of corruptions on her. The higher the tier of the instance, the more corruptions she will have. When the induction bar Toxic Rejuvenation pops up, it means that she has started to self-heal and can heal back to 100% morale. The only way to break her out of the self-heal is to remove all of the corruptions. However, since she's in a deadly puddle, this means that classes with ranged corruption removal skills will need to take care of that. However, if you have adds up at the same time, take the adds out first. To make things a bit more interesting, Oakwanine will also do the same skills as the priestesses earlier in the fight, that is giving you a cleansable fear and doing siphon life damage induction that can be interrupted. In terms of positioning, we found it easiest if the tank stays by the entrance gate and tanks everything there, allowing the range, their entire room to move around. If you've come up with any other strategies, please feel free to drop them in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's episode. Until next time.